look at what your personal definition of these things are, because these are the pillars of a beautiful life, right? This is a web that you are weaving for yourself, but you want to make sure that when you are sort of building this infrastructure for your life, that it honors your truth and not anybody else's. When you are living by somebody else's truth or through the lens of someone else's validation or approval, you're inevitably going to be in a lower possible timeline, right? Maybe it's a good timeline, maybe it's comfortable, maybe it's safe. It's not your highest possible one. Hey everyone, I hope you are well, or as well as you possibly can be given the circumstances of existing. It's your girl Jasmine Kylene. I'm a spiritual counselor, I'm a journalist, I'm a little bunny hopping around doing her best, and I'm so happy to be here with you today, especially because I'm feeling alive, which is a privilege after my second round of surviving COVID. Just breathing. It's like, what a gift, right? So I was inspired to make this video today because oh my God. So I have a tattoo of a spider, and not because it's trendy, but because I have really felt connected to spiders for some time now, and they've really symbolized a lot for me. For those of you who aren't into like animal symbolism, certain animals will communicate with you, especially if they're coming around you suddenly. If you're suddenly starting to notice birds or bees or certain animal emblems more frequently, there's a message that they're bringing to you. It's just fact. And so spiders always come at very, very, very pivotal moments in my life when it's really, and then they symbolize a ton of things, the death and rebirth cycle, right, with their 8 legs. And most of all, they are sort of like these animals that symbolize creation and manifestation and the stories that we write for ourselves, and essentially the webs that we weave for our lives, right? When we think about what we're living in, what our home is, and when we allow ourselves to be patient with that construction, really intentional with that construction, and intricate with the detail of it, like spiders are with their webs, we really begin to notice, what am I building my life with? What are the circumstances, the people, the situations, the habits that make up my life? Am I being intentional and authentic with the choices that I make here? So just, yeah, all in all, spiders are very, very, very symbolic for me, and a lot of people know this. And so this week alone, I have gotten like 3 or 4 messages from friends, people I don't know as well, just people that are like, hey, spiders are being really loud in my life right now, and I need you to tell me what's going on. And so I wanted to make a video about essentially, are you living in your highest possible timeline? Because that is kind of the question that I think a lot of us are being asked right now. And I think even if you're being visited by spiders or not, there's like this huge purging and ascension that's kind of collectively happening right now. And it really is this call to action of like, are you ready to create the life of your dreams? And so I want to talk a little bit about what that looks like, especially because obviously, like I said, I'm very connected to spiders. I've seen them a lot throughout different periods of my life, and for the last like few months I hadn't been seeing them as much, and I was like, not me being abandoned. And then within the past like 3 weeks, nonstop, just like nonstop spider visitors. And these past 3 weeks I have undergone literal death, like in every single way. Just like my life is unrecognizable. Who I am is unrecognizable. I had a big change happen with work that has pushed me to really commit to doing stuff like this full time, like stuff that actually aligns with my purpose full time, and like a lot of shifts in like relationship. Just a lot has happened, guys, and it really has all been call to action of like, are you ready to live your highest possible timeline and your just your fullest potential? And I feel like I'm seeing that also happen for the people that are asking me about why spiders are showing up for them. And so I'm gonna talk a little bit about why you also may be feeling this, and also like a question to ask yourself. So just to like preface, I have a whole entire video on like timeline hopping and shifting your vibration in order to align with the highest possible timeline. You can definitely check it out. People still really like that video. I made it a very long time ago, and it's hard for me to watch it back because I feel like I was very young, even though it was like maybe 2 years ago, but I was like, did you know anything you were talking about? But anyway, I think the information is still very relevant, so check it out if you feel called to. But just in essence, I am someone who believes in what now is very trendy in terms of like the multiverse and multiple timelines happening at once. And I I don't think it's this experience of like there's a good timeline and there's a bad timeline. I think that there are an infinite amount of timelines that you can find yourself on that branch out from like very minute decisions, if that makes sense. Like I think one very small stem, kind of like everything everywhere all at once, like one small shift or decision can unfold into an entire new reality. And I think that in a conscious state, we live in the timeline that most accurately aligns with our vibration, whether your vibration is low or high. And that isn't to say, once again, good or bad, it's not a dual thing, but rather like what are the stories that you're telling yourself? What do you believe in? What are the choices that you are making? And where does that vibrationally place you? Because your circumstances are going to reflect your inner world and your belief in what you deserve your circumstances to look like, right? So if you commit to living your highest possible vibration, you'll in turn live a life that mirrors and reflects that. And that isn't to say that it'll always be easy. In fact, I think that's probably the more difficult choice, because you'll inevitably have to kind of purge and release everything that doesn't align with being in the highest possible timeline. So the relationships that are low vibrational, the jobs that are low vibrational, habits, the ways of thinking, the limiting beliefs, everything that does not align with being in the highest possible vibration, if you really commit to living in that, is going to inevitably fall away. And sometimes it's very painful. I think decay can be very painful. I just made a video as well on ascension symptoms, because I think we're all sort of like collectively in the same space with it. But yeah, it can hurt. Shedding skin can hurt. And that's why I think it's something you shouldn't rush, especially if you're in the ascension process. When a snake is shedding its skin, it doesn't, rip it off. It allows it to sort of organically go. So whatever is moving out of your life because you know you are committed to self-betterment, let it move out at its own time and just be patient. I hope that makes sense. That's like a side tangent. But anyway, yes. If you are someone who is very fear-based, or you don't believe in just your worth being unconditional, and you don't think that like the highest potential of your life is accessible and within reach, that's totally fine, but that's the timeline that you're going to vibrationally align with, and you're going to have circumstances and people and situations that honor and mirror that belief. I think how you shift your reality is directly derivative of what your belief system is, and so that's kind of the first step when it comes to aligning with the highest possible timeline. It's like, what are my beliefs surrounding my worth and what I'm deserving of, and how can I begin to shift those to honor the physical reality that I want to see? Now, that was a lot of words, but just a kind of a preface of like, what does it mean to sort of like live in your highest possible vibration? Especially because, like I said, I think a lot of us right now are kind of being called to align with our highest possible vibration. And I think that a lot of us can be at that part of the journey. And I think I'm talking about a very specific part of the journey where you're not quite at the beginning. You're in that liminal space of like, you're very, very, very far from where you were, and you're no longer what you no longer are, right? You're no longer what you no longer are, but you're not quite where you want to be. And I'm being careful with how I word that, because I think that all magic and all manifestation is stemmed from being in the present moment. So if we see sort of like a point of arrival that we're trying to get at, we're going to continually be like literally slaves to the arrival of something that we'll never arrive at, because it'll continue to be out of reach, because you'll continue to push it further, because there is no arrival. It's all about the journey. It's all about being in the present moment. However, if you know that you are committed to self-betterment and to a life that honors that awareness of self, that abundance, then you can be aware of like, okay, my physical circumstances and my physical reality right now in these ways mirror my belief system surrounding my worth, and in these ways don't. Then it's also totally rational to have like goals and things that you want to have in your physical reality to reflect being on the highest possible timeline, right? Whether that's a relationship or a job or any sort of personal goals. It's okay to have goals and have visions for yourself, just as long as you're not sort of waiting to exhale until you get them, because then that'll take you out of the present moment. And it's all about sort of embodying the vibration of that in the present moment so that it arrives to you rather than getting it. Third tangent of this video. I'm just talking at this point. But yes, I find that a lot of us are at that very sensitive point of no longer where you were, very, very, very far from where you used to be, and kind of at that soft spot of like creating what you now want, right? So like there are a lot of things and there are a lot of gifts and manifestations that have come from your journey thus far, but you're kind of in that awkward, uncomfortable part of shedding the last remnants of what no longer resonates with the timeline that you are choosing to align with. So I just want to validate like how uncomfortable being in that liminal space can be, right? Like not where you were, not exactly quite in the fullness or the full realization of what you were calling in, right? It's like it's an in-between state, but it's also the most powerful state that you can be in, because now is when it is crucial and when it is pivotal that you are really intentional with the story that you are telling yourself, how you are responding to your fears, right? I always say it's not about being fearless, but rather cultivating a healthy response to your fear, being an observer of your fear and still choosing bravery and whatever bravery looks like in the situation. But when you're in that point, you're at the most potent when it comes to manifestation, because it's typically when you get to that point, you know, those like last minute limiting beliefs, those last minute attachments and just, yeah, fears get the loudest, because you're kind of like right at the precipice of really up leveling into, like I said, that highest possible timeline. And so it's uncomfortable because it's easy to kind of succumb to old ways of being. And like as someone who, for example, believes in being abundance, believes in my own personal definition of abundance, when like my financial security was threatened this week with like shifts in job and stuff, honey, the way that I laid in bed and cried for 2 days, and it was insane because I was crying over a fear that I thought no longer lived within my body, but it was really like the remnants of it that needed to be purged in order to arrive where I'm at right now, which is this ascended place of like, holy shit, I now, through the deconstruction, through the implosion, through what was once a source of misaligned but security, like financial security for me, through the dissolution of that, I now have this like dead space to create a source of abundance that actually honors my truth and my purpose and the life that I really actually want to live, a life that I'm fulfilled by. Which beautifully segues into the next and the main point of this video, which is that when you are in that space of, oh shit, okay, I am really being called to be clear and intentional with the life that I'm creating for myself and rid myself of everything that doesn't align with that highest possible reality. Or if you are kind of in a place where you're like, is this it? Like, is this like as good as it gets for me? Am I actually finally am I actually really like standing in the manifestation of being in the highest possible timeline for myself? Which, mind you, your timeline is something that you're gonna hop in and out of. It's not really like this, I mean, it can be a permanent state of arrival if you're like this enlightened being, but it really is a thing that shifts with every thought and decision and choice that you make. Because like I said, our vibration should shift all the time. We need that contrast in order to be aware of when we're in that highest vibrational state, right? So like if today you're in your highest possible timeline and in 2 days from now you are making very fear-based decisions or, and I mean, mind you, it's always safe to feel your emotions. I think that people could spiritually bypass by saying that like being in your highest possible vibration means that you're always happy and that you're like never actually experiencing the emotions that come with being human. That's definitely not the case. I just think that being in the highest possible timeline means always being an observer of your feelings and recognizing when they need to be expressed, putting a time limit on that, and still making rational choices from the lens of trust. That makes sense? But yes, so I say all that to say that you're always going to teeter and totter, move in from the 3D and the 5D. That's kind of the whole point. The whole point is to master allowing ourselves to have this like spiritual human experience without guilt or shame, and just do our best to stay as high as possible. And sometimes staying high up means letting those lower vibration energies move through and be expressed. Because if you just like spiritually bypass, you're like, no, I'm in my highest possible timeline, and in this timeline we don't experience jealousy or rage, they're going to like manifest and like fester physically in your body, and then you're gonna get ill, and that causes disease, right? So like, don't do that. God, the tangents that I keep finding myself on today. Yes, so I say all this to say, if you are in a place where you really want to sort of fully finish that up leveling. I hope this isn't anticlimactic, but like the most important thing that you need to do, especially if you're in that like last sort of step of like no longer who I was, deciding who I'm becoming, in the precipice of a lot of manifestations and also fears and doubts. As an advocate for journaling, there are 2 prompts that I would really invite you to sit with. The first prompt is, what is my personal definition of, and write out your personal definition of abundance, of safety, of play, of God, of joy. And make sure that when you are self-defining these things, that you are looking at it through a completely unfiltered, authentic lens. You're not using any sort of societal programming to define these things. You're not thinking about like what your mom would say it is, or what you think people would want to see if they were to read your definition, right? Like, assume that your eyes are the only eyes and your brain is the only brain that is going to know of this information. What is your personal definition of abundance, right? So to give you an example, I for a long time thought and defined abundance first and foremost as having a plethora of money. Mind you, that still remains true. However, it's not the first and foremost. And when I'm still living in the timeline in which it was my first and foremost, losing a large source of consistent income was detrimental. However, since I've kind of had that deconstruction and I have now been in a space where I've been able to reintroduce myself to what my own personal definition of abundance is, someone reached out to do a reading with me and they weren't able to afford my rates, and I was like, I'm so sorry, those aren't, my rates, but I have like payment plan options and like, things that we can do. I don't ever want to say no to a reading because of finances. And then they basically were telling me that they were in this really sort of like destructive state, and they were really being called to have this reading with me, and it was very important that they did. And I immediately was like, okay, we'll figure out payment. Like, let's do this. Like, this is necessary. And it was a really powerful reading, and I could tell it really was important and pivotal for them on their journey. And when I finished the reading, I felt richer than ever before. I felt richer than any other payday, than any other direct deposit, than any other day where I had it physically in my hands. The physicality of abundance was felt through a sense of embodiment. I felt rich. I felt like money because I had offered my energy to something that was so important and purposeful. And so it was that day that I sat down and I was like, what is my personal definition of abundance? And it means using my energy, my most valuable form of currency, to feed something beautiful, to feed love, to feed light. So once I had clarity on what my personal definition of abundance was, I was now able to vibrationally align myself with the timeline where that is true and where that is honored. And so now I'm at a point where money is still absolutely something that I used to define abundance, but it is bred through the lens of, am I living a life that is rich in relation to what I define richness to be, right? So like, first and foremost, am I being led by my purpose? Yes, okay, beautiful. Then all of the money that I deserve is going to find me from that. Once again, as I always say, I hope that that makes sense, but like that is one example of like, look at what your personal definition of these things are, because these are the pillars of a beautiful life, right? This is the web that you are weaving for yourself, but you want to make sure that when you are sort of building this infrastructure for your life, that it honors your truth and not anybody else's. When you are living by somebody else's truth or through the lens of someone else's validation or approval, you're inevitably going to be in a lower possible timeline, right? Maybe it's a good timeline, maybe it's comfortable, maybe it's safe. It's not your highest possible one. And that's what I meant by, I don't think there are bad timelines and good timelines. I think that they are all vibrational, and you can be in like a medium vibration. You can be like, you know what, I don't really want to be doing this job, or I don't really want to be in this relationship, but it's safe, or it provides me this source of comfort or this source of safety. And it's like, okay, sure, do that. I believe to be kind of like a medium high timeline, working a job that I wasn't passionate about, but that was providing me a lot of financial security. But I've been doing so much work to be in the highest possible timeline, which I know is nothing but unconditional love for myself and others. And that all of my work and everything that I do is derivative of that, and that meant that, like, for that example, a job. And also I've had romantic relationships fall apart, friendships fall apart, but also through me bidding farewell to them, the entrance of relationships and friendships that honor my evolutionized self. So yeah, just like I said, when you have that personal definition, right, I really shifted how I defined value and abundance. And so then I, began to define, what does safety really mean for me? What does security really mean for me? Defining what kind of partnership I actually want, not the partnership that I think I'm supposed to want, that others won't judge me if I have, you know what I mean? Like, what is my personal definition, and what are the intersections of my wants and my needs? And like, once you have, and I really invite you to like sit down and find all the pillars of what make a beautiful life, a beautiful web, and self-define all of them. If it's joy, what does joy really mean for you? Does joy mean having, that consistent job and a roof over your head and what, or does it mean freedom to travel? Does it mean that your body feels healthy? Like, what does joy actually mean to you? What does play mean to you? What does freedom mean to you? Really, really, really self-define the things that make a beautiful life. And once you have those definitions clearly in front of you, make vows to them. Say, because I know that this is my personal definition of joy or safety or health or love or partnership, because I know that this is my personal definition of it, I vow to live a life that is committed to upholding it, right? So now I know that, like, because purpose is where I derive abundance from, I refuse, no matter what, to apply for any job that is for the sole purpose of just getting by or just having financial stability. Because I know that the money that I deserve, right? Money is not a dirty thing. Money is defined by the intention behind it. And the money and the physical abundance that I deserve is going to be derivative of me honoring purpose and honoring truth and honoring authenticity. So like, I'm fully committed to living a life where my work is honest and true and aligned with my purpose and my dharma, and the money's gonna obviously come from that, because like, that's how energy works. Yes, take some time to self-define those things, and then once you are done, write down your vows to them. How do you vow, and what are the actionable, what is the aligned action that you can take to honor those pillars and vow to honor those pillars? So once again, for example, I'm no longer going to apply to jobs that are just for mere survival, that will keep me in a lower vibration. I'm going to believe in my ability to create an abundant life by doing what I know I'm meant to be doing. And then when it comes to relationships, what you know your partnership to be, I vow to honor and uphold that by speaking my boundaries, by really saying no and cutting off the romantic entanglements that no longer serve me. And just one by one, really making sure that you are sprouting out actionable steps to honor the truth that aligns with you living in your highest possible vibration. And yeah, these definitions are proving difficult to come to you. I would invite you to just kind of sit, get in a really meditative state, and really sit and begin to visualize what your most vibrant life looks like. Like, what does living the most gorgeous version of my life look like? Really, really, really see it, smell it, taste it, see a day play out, see the people that are in it, see how you're sort of spending your time, expending your energy. And then once you come out of that meditation, out of that visualization, and really making sure that you tap into your subconscious, right? Don't make your conscious the lead in that. Really like get into a meditative state, tap into your subconscious, whether that's through breath work or just through sitting still, and allow what your soul says a vibrant life looks like to come through. And once you have clarity on that visual, begin to journal out like, okay, in my highest possible timeline, clearly like my freedom is defined by my fashion. Like I'm wearing things that make me feel really, really seen and really deserving of being seen. So like freedom to me looks like expressing myself through my clothes, right? I just kind of let whatever truth is meant to come up. And yeah, so I hope that makes sense. Like I always fucking say. there's neighborhood drama. And know, if I can validate anything, that you have come so fucking far. You have come so far, and it's so important that you sit and you smell the roses of the garden that you have nurtured and tended to, and that if you are in that uncomfortable space of creating and shedding and dying and being reborn, and if spiders are telling you, or if I'm telling you, because at this point I fucking am a spider, just know that you are the narrator, and you know, staring at the blank page before you, open up the dirty window. Let the sun illuminate the words that you cannot find, reaching for something in the distance, so close you can almost taste it. Release your inhibitions. Feel the rain on your skin. No one else can do it for you. Only you can let it in. Okay, I'm sorry. I can't believe that just happened. Yeah, just get to know your truth so that you can live your truth. Get to know your truth so you can live your truth. And getting to know your truth sometimes means just unlearning what isn't your truth. And then in that dead space, allowing your truth to come through. So yeah, definitely work with that prompt and create the best possible version of your life for yourself, because you deserve it. That is all. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this resonated. I hope that there was some nectar to take from it. If you want to work with me one-on-one, you can do so by booking your slot at jasminekylene.com for a reading. You can also follow me on Instagram at jasminekylene, because I post a lot of content. I'm also going to start doing my full and new moon circles again, both virtually and in person. So if you happen to be either in Madrid, Spain, or Miami, Florida, that's kind of where I bounce back and forth from, then you can catch one of those in person. But if not, definitely join us virtually. We journal according to the moon's themes, we share, we do breath work, we do meditation. It's a vibe-a-rooney. And yeah, I'm sending you all my love. Happy manifesting.